Let me first start by welcoming everyone. Um, so today we have Stefan Selbert from Las Cumbres Ranch. We're so excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. And actually, I am going to give a quick intro to NAHR for those that might not have heard of it or know about it. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So actually, if you see this little dot right here, this is Santa Ynez. So Nature, Art, and Habitat Residency is, as this says, an eco-laboratory of multidisciplinary practice. And actually, I got the chance to be a fellow in Santa Ynez in 2022, which is where I actually got to meet Stefan Selbert, who you'll hear today. And actually the ranch, Las Cumbres Ranch, is in Los Alamos, which is just maybe what, like 30 minutes north of Santa Ynez as the crow flies. So yeah, so Nature, Art, and Habitat Residency, it's multidisciplinary, so fellows can sort of um, make their own program, and whether that's art, science, writing. And this year's theme is fire, renewal, rituals, and power. And this is not going. Okay, so yes, fire. Um, just quickly, this is actually the other location, or the main location in Italy, the Taleggio Valley, which is right outside of the Italian Alps. And it is an opportunity for people to be in community with others, and um, doing this work that is, as I said, art, culture, writing, music, performance, whatever. And then we have our California residency, as I mentioned, which is in April and October. And actually, the April one, I believe, is starting next weekend. Is that correct, Ilaria?
Yes, on the
Wonderful.
14th
And
and the
that one runs
21st. Sorry.
for 2 weeks. And the Italian residency is between two weeks, and there's other options as well that are a little bit longer. And really, NAHR is engagement. And so it's not just these residencies, it's also workshops and installations. And we actually have a book coming out later this year, so watch this space. There's also an international photography contest. Is that still going on, Ilaria?
Yes, until the end of April, anybody can participate. Everything is on our Facebook page and social media.
And it's about chimneys and fireplaces. So if you have any cool photos of chimneys and fireplaces, please submit them. And then here again, talking about the book that's coming out later this year. So you can watch this space. NAHR is participation. So it's really fellows and participants from all over the world. And we've had quite a few supporters along the way, and partners. We're very grateful for them and for all of you for being here, and especially, of course, for anyone who made a donation today. We really appreciate it. And then this is the residency for April. Actually, Frank is going to be joining us starting next weekend, and we look forward to seeing what he has to share. So, with that, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and welcome to Stefan Selbert from Las Cumbres Ranch. As I mentioned, I got to meet him in 2022 as a fellow in the California residency, and I actually got to do a ride along with him and another friend of mine, Jackie Eshelman, who is the lead at UVE, which is up in Northern California, and they are a hub for the Savory Institute. And so with that, I am going to share my screen and turn it over to Stefan.
Perfect. We ready? Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the intro, and I really appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited I get to talk to some more people about grass and cows and fire a little bit too. So I think what would be cool is if I'll run through this presentation. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what we do and all the stuff we're doing at the ranch. And then I'm going to intertwine a little bit of fire in there as well, because there are some parts that talk about it. And then if you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer anything you guys have to ask, because that's kind of the funnest part. I'll kind of give you guys the overview, and then we can see what's the most interesting. So yeah, this presentation is called In Harmony with Nature. It's one of the main things that we like to do here at Las Cumbres Ranch. We can go to the next slide. All right, so I'll talk quickly about me. I was born in Santa Barbara. My family had an avocado farm, grew up there. Then I got into production and songwriting. I've produced some songs in Japan, which is really funny. I was also an engineer. One of those songs went #1, which is awesome. I'm going to brag about that forever. I was an engineer and I worked with the Sunday service. So that was Kanye West and just kind of following them around recording, which was really cool. But then in 2019, kind of got back into agriculture when I heard about regenerative agriculture, because I learned that you could make a positive impact. My whole life, our whole generation, they've told us we can't do anything. So when I found out you could, that made a big difference. So the cowboy who was working at my family's farm, which is now the one we're at now, had to go home, and my mom called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come do this?" And I was like, "I'm so tired of being yelled at by famous people. That sounds awesome." We can go to the next slide. Okay, this is the important thing. These are kind of the 3 main points that I try to get across, especially when talking about grasses, cows, or what we do. The first one is working with nature. That's the most important by far. And so how we do that is we use something called holistic management, which is basically a blueprint of how you want to run your operation, life, whatever, socially, economically, and environmentally. The main tool of that is holistic plant grazing. I'll get into that later. The breed of cattle we chose is called Bonsmara. They're a mix between Hereford, Afrikaner, and Shorthorn. So they're a crossbreed and they're from South Africa. And they do really well in brittle or dry climates, basically climates that only have water a certain time of year. And then what happens when you work with nature and you use a breed that fits your environment, you start getting a lot more perennials. And that's kind of the main thing we're going for, whether it be shrubs, trees, grasses, anything that sequesters carbon is what you want to do, because the more diversity you have, almost in every sense, the better you're doing, especially when it comes to plants and animals. Next slide. So here we are, strip grazing. This is kind of what we do to get that super high density across the entire ranch. The ranch is about 967 acres. It's divided up into 33 pastures. And then within those 33 pastures, we divided up, I don't know, anywhere from 15 to 60 times. So we're usually at about 100,000 pounds per acre at all times. And we're usually moving about twice a day. Right now, before this, I moved the bulls before we started the presentation in the rain, which sucked, but is also really good because we love the rain. And then I'll go do that again later and make sure the cows are moving as well. So yeah, that's kind of like the main thing. We're able to get extreme forage efficiency. So as you can see, they're grazing everything down, but they're leaving a bunch too, which is really important. Yeah. Okay, next slide. Okay, this one's sick. This is crushing brush for fire mitigation. Before you play it, we have lots of places where the brush is overgrown, and well, now we have a lot less, but we had lots of places where the brush had overgrown and started over-resting, meaning that it wasn't getting a proper graze or being trampled. And what happens is that starts to create the perfect environment for fire, because it's old, it's dry, and it's can burn at a hot heat. And brush and trees are like the most dangerous things because they burn the hottest. So yeah, this is what we do for that. You can play that video. That's my horse Prize. So we'll feed on top of it and have the animals kind of trample everything. And so that pushes back all the dirt, or it pushes all of these oxidized branches where nothing is growing back into the soil. And then we're able to create growth from the overrest because we're pushing back all this stuff that was being oxidized into the atmosphere, meaning it slowly turning into something that could burn easily and oxidizing. So burning carbon into the atmosphere through it's dying and pushing it back into the soil and bringing it back into the ground. Next slide. All right. Ooh, this is cool. Now we get to talk about the cows. If you play that video, you can see.
Toma! Toma! Toma!
That's me moving the cows. They're cows from South Africa in California, and they speak Spanish. So that's them moving to a new pasture that I just broke down. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Start talking about their temperament. This is one of the babies that was just born. We tag, weigh, and do all the stuff at birth so we know how much they weighed, how much their mom weighed. We're always really careful about monitoring how they're doing in not only animals' health, but also grass and everything health. And so what that happens is we're able to pick the animals that are fitting the best and kind of breed towards what that is. He was just born, so he was looking for his mom, and I was standing there, so I thought I'd get a little selfie with him, and then I passed him back to his mom. They're super mellow. We make sure they stay mellow because it makes it so you can move them and do a lot more stuff with them, and then they're less stressed, so the meat that they produce is much better as well. We can go to the next slide. I think this will be about the bulls. Yep. All right, here's our foundation bull. This is Prince. I can talk about the qualities of the breed that make them important really quick. So as you can see, he's darker in the front than he is in the back. He's bigger in the front than he is in the back. He's got a pretty even hump. The shape of his face is really good. His conformation, so the shapes I was talking about, is really good. His tail is almost touching the ground, which is really important. So the reason that's important is because they'll use it to whip for flies. This breed specifically has bones that only go down 2/3 their tail, so they can really whip their tail. They have super thick skin, which you can definitely see here. So that means they are disease resistant because most cattle-borne illnesses are transferred through ticks. What else is important? Yeah, those are kind of all of the things that are important in the males. We can go to the next one and talk about the females. Okay, this is my favorite cow. This is Shania. My favorite cows get names because they're the best. That's her and her little bull calf. We actually kept that bull calf and we're going to use him to breed because he came out so well. So you can see that what we look for in the females is a little bit different. She's kind of the opposite. She's big in the back and smaller in the front. She's light and throughout her color doesn't change. She has downturned hips, which makes for easy birthing. You can see that her baby is tiny. So they're about half the size of Angus cattle and about half the size of most cattle that are for meat production. So that means easy calving and they grow really well. And then what's most important is her calf is right by her side. She's a great mom. And that's something we breed for as well. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. All right, plants. This is my favorite part. There's my dog, Koa. She's covered in grasses, legumes, and forbs. That is a pasture. We try to leave our pastures as long as possible. And so what happens is you'll see some stuff grow, and then more stuff will grow, and then it just starts getting really big, and that's when it's a good time to graze it. So we can go to the next slide and I'll start talking about these plants. All right, here we go. Here's a bunch of perennials except for one in the bottom. That's golden violet up top on the right, surrounded by some burr clovers. But that golden violet is a native perennial and cattle really like forbs. So that's important. They love forbs, meaning flowering plants, whether it be alfalfa like a legume or just a flower like this. those usually have a high Brix content, which means it has a high sugar, which means it has a high caloric value, which means the cows will want to eat it for energy and gaining weight. The grass to the left, I think that's canary reed grass. Yeah. So that's a reeded grass. It looks almost like Timothy, but it's a little bit hardier. It's a big perennial. There's another one in the back surrounded by vetch, and it looks like a little bit of clover. And then on the bottom right, we have arrowhead clover, which is like a really good forage for cattle, and it's just naturally coming up. I don't seed. I don't really believe in seeding. I think all of the seeds are there, especially in rangeland. You just have to give the environment for them to grow. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay, ooh, this is cool. So this is an area in the back that was fully oxidized. Then we started feeding on top of it to trample it. And because we were doing such intense grazing and really pushing stuff back, that means we'd have to leave it for even longer. So this pasture we left for a year, I think, without touching it. And we can go to the next slide. And so, yeah, so there it is a year later, from dry oxidized brush to nothing to grass. I should have taken another picture of it today, but we're doing all of our monitoring where most of these pictures come tomorrow, which Jackie's coming and we're going to do all that tomorrow. So I'll make sure to get lots of pictures. So yeah, most of the time when we're grazing, we're at that high density and we'll never come back to a pasture at least 6 months, but at most, sometimes we can get up to a year and a half. So we'll need to give it a long time to grow. And cattle ranching, people forget that you need to give as much rest as possible. And the reason you want to do that is because as stuff grows, more stuff comes up. It's the wildest thing to see. First you get nothing, then you get weeds, then your weeds get bigger, and then you start getting the things you like. So you don't ever want to get rid of anything. You don't want to try to, especially for us at least, you never want to try to get rid of anything. You always want to try to leave it there to do what it needs to do, whether it be thistle, coyote bush, or anything. But yeah, we can go to the next slide.
So one more time, just so that you can see that difference again, here to here. Very cool. All right.
A little bit of water. All right, the results so far. So this is April 12th, 2022. This is one of our EOV monitoring photos. EOV is ecological outcome verification. It's our certification for regenerative. So this year we didn't get that much rain. We were grazing a little bit differently. And the next year, which is the next photo, same hill, way different. And I'm going to take a picture of it and I will send it to you guys so you can see it. And when we do the photos for this year, much more photosynthesis happening. All of the grasses are greener. This was actually not from high density grazing. This is just from rest. So this next year we'll have it with both high density grazing and high rest. So this hill did much. We can go back to the one before it. You can see. So here you see there's the perennials, which is the giant wild rye, which is a native perennial that can grow tall as me, sometimes even twice as tall. And in between, there's a lot of dry space. It has been grazed, but it has been grazed pretty lightly. And then if we go forward, it's all full up with other stuff. There's turkey pea. I see lots of legumes. I see lots of vetch. I see a little bit of one plant that's not as palatable, but is still good, is that thistle. It's full of stuff. We want as much stuff as we can get. So with working with nature, so high density grazing, leaving it for a long time to rest so as much stuff can grow, especially in the growing season. That's when it's most important, which is right now for us. Using a group of animals that fit your context and fit your ranch. So that's the Bonsmara for us. Not only do they fit, but they also produce an incredibly high quality piece of beef because they fit. They do so well, and so they create a really delicious product. And then the results you get is you sequester carbon, and you also get more biodiversity. So as you're sequestering more carbon, you get more plants and more possibilities of different plants. We got our first warm season grass last year, which was salt grass, which is like really exciting because where we are in California, when it rains, it's cold. So it's exciting to see that we were able to have so much growth that we got a plant to grow when there was no rain, because warm seasons need much more heat. to grow. And most people get their rain when it's hot. We get it when it's cold. So it was exciting that that was one of the first ones that came up this year. So more biodiversity means that hopefully this year we'll have even more of them. We'll see. We'll just keep monitoring and make sure we're heading in the right direction. But yeah, that's what we do there at the ranch. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you guys, that's kind of the spiel of what we do. It's kind of cool. It's exciting. I'm excited to do our monitoring this year to see how we did, see what's coming up. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. How do we want to do this part?
People can raise their hands and then we can have people go off of mute and ask their questions. Or if you're in a place where you can't talk out loud, you can also put questions into the chat and we can read those out loud. I actually have a question to sort of start us off. So, of course, your work is to also help mitigate the fire fuel and take that way down. But what happens if there is have you had the situation where there has been a wildfire nearby? What do you do about the cows and how does that affect their health?
So we always have a section of pasture in the front that's irrigated. If there is a fire, we'll bring all the animals down onto the irrigated pasture so they're safe, or as safe as they can be. All of our grass is usually pretty wet, so we'll see how we're doing towards the end of the season. We'll decide if we need to do anything. But again, if a fire comes through here, all around us is really high burn value stuff. There's lots of dried trees and dried oak brush, so one little bit in the middle wouldn't stop it. But maybe it would. I hope we don't ever have to deal with it. We are lucky that we're in a part of Los Alamos where there is lots of farming. So there's lots of water around us, which is good. But yeah, fire is super strong and you kind of want to make sure that when it comes, you're ready for it. Let's see if I have it. Hold on. I think I have it with me. I have my little ag pass. So everybody in California, if they're ranchers, they'll get this, which means I missed the hair, man. I got to bring it back. Which means that if there's a fire, we're allowed to get in and get to our animals and try to save them. But yeah, it's crazy that that's one of the precautions we have to take.
Wow.
Do you think the crashing of the grasses also, I mean, you mentioned that helps mitigating the fire, but could you expand a little bit on the crashing aspect and
Of the brush? Yeah, that's a good question. So when you take it from dry, oxidized, just overcrowded, stopped photosynthesizing, slowly drowning itself out or crowding itself out and suffocating itself because it's stopping itself from photosynthesizing. When you bring it down, what you do is the whole plant has its root mass still underground. But when you crush it all down, what happens is you don't want to kill the plant. That would defeat the whole purpose, but that crushing of it allows it to grow fresh again. And once it's young and fresh, it's much more palatable to animals, so you don't have to feed on top of it. So then it starts photosynthesizing and then it starts living again. So it goes from something that's asking to be burnt to something that's asking to be grazed. You're just shifting your environment from I guess, a fire tolerant environment to a grazing tolerant environment.
And in the meantime, the crushing also breaks through that the hard pan, right? The top layer of crust that can sometimes be there if it's not covered soil, right?
Yeah. We try not to break, because I've tried it so far in my testing. The best thing to do is to make sure you're pushing the ground, but you never want to get rid of you never want to create bare soil. Sometimes you will, which sucks, but it is what it is. If you can keep that layer of plant matter on top, it's like you're composting on your entire ranch. So every time you open it up, it's kind of like, oh man, that part's going to need a little bit more help. So if I ever do something where I accidentally overgraze, then I'll go to my friends' ranches and take all their old moldy hay, which is already composting, and then throw it on top. just to make sure we can get some sort of ground cover. But yeah. So yeah. Yes.
Chris, do you want to come off mute and just tell us about your comment that you made in the chat?
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I can.
Or you can. Yeah,
Yeah.
Steph.
Oh, yeah. I'm just
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Zoom.
Hi,
Zoom,
Chris. What's up, man?
Hey, Stefan. Hey, yeah. So, let's see. Fire triangle, right? Fuel, oxygen, and heat. So, if we think of standing fuel, if we have a dry grass situation, it's standing up, and there's a lot more air trapped in between each bit of fuel, and so a wildfire can just blast right through that standing grass, and the rate of spread is really high. Whereas if we trample it, then we change the concentration of oxygen in that scenario. And so it'll still burn quickly, but the rate of spread is much slower.
That's so awesome. Chris is gonna come tomorrow for EOV. He's
I'll be
another
there.
EOV guy, and he's so smart. I call him and ask him about stuff all the time.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Very cool. Who else has questions?
I actually have a question not related to fire, but to the grasses. Have you looked at how many species of grasses and plants? Have you done like a library or not yet?
I should. We made a t-shirt with some of my favorite ones that I found on the ranch. But yeah, that would be fun. I guess when we do our long-term monitoring, which will be every 5 years, we have 2 places where you do a diversity test, which is the worst test ever to do, but it's because it takes so long. But we'll be able to see. But I'm gonna start recording all the stuff I see. Because there's been some, like this year we had a really cool parasitic what's it called? Giant Indian paintbrush, which was eating poison oak. So I loved it. But there's like all these really crazy plants.
Yeah, I would assume
Yeah,
that
I will start to do that. You are right. That is a
Yeah.
great idea.
actually maybe also connected to UC Davis. You know, I was yesterday in a tour of native gardens in the city of Los Angeles. It's not really exactly related to what you say, but in what I'm mentioning, it is that they like the Gottlieb family has a botanical garden that is all native, and I collaborate with UC Davis for the biodiversity, both of plants and birds and animals, that, you know, by creating this such biodiverse land, attracts a lot of birds, etc. And so they have naturalists and students coming and monitoring the biodiversity. It was kind of interesting to see it in a garden situation, not in a farming, but yeah. There is, Leslie, you want to say something?
Oh,
You're on
You're
mute.
muted.
I know, sorry, and the microphone was off the screen so I was just wondering if you're finding that your ranching community, are they similarly engaged in these processes, or are you finding that there's a tension between the way that people want to approach land management and fire management?
yeah, it's a great question. So there's a couple of us. There's a winery right across the street called Ameviv wine, which does regenerative wining. They put grapes on they put ducks on their grapes. They also put sheep. So they're really cool. They're directly across from us. And then all of the neighbors, everybody here is pretty awesome. Not everybody does regenerative stuff. One of our neighbors to the right or to the west of us, his company is called Betteravia. So they owned most of Santa Maria, and I love him. He's awesome. Milo is one of my favorite people, and he has really cool advice for cattle management because that's what they used to do. They're open to it, and I'm slowly convincing them to let me graze their land.
Oh, wow.
So and then to the left of us we got to the east of us we got Moneghetti, who's a famous team roper, and he's super cool too. Everybody here in this town is pretty awesome. They've all been from families that were here they're all the a lot of them are all the same land grant families that have been here for so many generations. So everybody's pretty cool, even if they're not doing regenerative stuff. They still have wealths of knowledge, and I love hanging out with them.
Can you talk a little bit about your time with is it Rodger Savory?
Yeah, what do you want to know?
Just like how long was he there for? How did you figure out to bring him in?
Yeah, so Rodger was the
What did he
person.
teach you, right?
Yeah,
Actually,
Rodger.
explain who he is first, because not all of us may know him.
Okay, so Rodger Savory is somebody who's been practicing holistic management basically his whole life. His dad is the inventor of holistic management, so he's been doing it since he was little. And he kind of showed us how we could divide up the ranch, what steps we should take, slowly get us into a space where we are able to get the high density, because it takes a long time. It's not a year process, it's not a month process, it's years. It's almost could be even be said to be generations. So he kind of showed us what stuff we can use, how we can divide up pastures, what animals would be best, what animals fit our thing, or excuse me, what animals fit our context or our holistic context. So he helped us develop a holistic context, figure out what we wanted to do and how much work we'd be able to put in to do it. Started off with a little. First, we divide the ranch up once. Now it's divided up almost probably 1,000 times, which is insane, saying it out loud. But yeah, he kind of showed us all that we could do, and he showed me, he was the first person to tell me about the regenerative aspect and explain it in a way that made sense. So yeah, that's who he is to
How
us.
would you, sorry, Stefan, since some people also jump a little bit later than your part of the presentation, maybe do you want to repeat, or what are for you the key aspects of regenerative and or holistic management, so that we kind of, also I want to mention for the ones that join later, please add your questions or join us in the conversation. Is now open to an open conversation, comments, questions. There is no, we are all here to learn, so that we are not all specialists. So Stefan is kind enough to explain to me, first of all, some of the points that I'm not even familiar with. So it's really an open mic situation at this point. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I just. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I'll do the quick rundown. At
Yeah.
Las Cumbres Ranch, we practice something called holistic management. Holistic management is a blueprint of how you want to run your operation, life, anything, socially, economically, and environmentally. What that means is, for us, there's three major aspects we look for. One is working with nature. So that for us is high density strip grazing and making sure we get a long period of rest before coming back to any certain part of the range. The second thing is picking a breed that works really well in our environment. That's Bonsmara. They're a mix between Shorthorn, Afrikaner, and Hereford. They're a composite breed, and they do really well in brittle environments, which is what we have here in California, meaning that there's not moisture every day, or there's not a lot of rain throughout the year. It's only for a certain period of time all at once. The third thing is, when you do those two things, find the things that fit your environment and work with nature, you start sequestering carbon and creating more diversity. So your land becomes more resilient. It becomes more, you don't protected from fire, and you have more forage, so you can have more animals, which is the best part.
And so that's, I don't, oh, let me off of blur for a second. So it's backwards to you apparently, sorry, but this is the book Holistic Management, Alan Savory. Actually, this is an older version, but they also have workbooks. They've got courses from the Savory Institute. I actually attended a 10-day intensive workshop. Not that I've used it, but It's very interesting stuff to learn about the grazing patterns, what to look for when you know that it's time to move the cattle, things like that. But holistic management, as Stefan said, is not just about grazing. It can also be how you run a family business, how you decide what you want to do with your life. It's really understanding what your context is and what the right decisions to make for your context are. So, yeah.
We have a question. Even you want to come off the mic or we read your question? And do you see the chat you wanna?
I see it. I can read it.
Okay.
Evan's asking if we have had our meat nutritionally analyzed, and if so, is there a correlation between the health of the land and the animal? Yeah, we actually just had some meat analyzed recently. We did send in some ground beef, and we found that the omega-3 versus 6 ratio is way different depending on what the animals are eating. And usually, and what we found was that our ratio is about, omega-3s is about 2 to 3. So 2, for every 2 omega-3s, there's 3 omega-6s. So that's really good. That's almost pushing fish quality of healthiness. And as our land gets better, I'm sure that'll even get more correlated, or maybe even get to the 1-to-1 ratio. Omega-6s to us are like corn. So those are sweet and high in energetic value to our brains. So we crave them. Anything that's bad for you that you crave, that's usually going to be, that's a fat, that's usually going to have high omega-6s. Omega-3s are the ones that are healthy for you, like the ones that come from fish and nuts. They have a more earthy flavor, which is why the difference in flavor between grass-fed and corn-fed. So yes, when the animals are healthy, you get a product that's healthier for you.
And it looks like Erica just shared in the chat. There's a link if you want to check out the series of Stefan and Rodger Savory called That's Pretty Neat, if you're interested in holistic management and Rodger's work. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Erica.
Thanks, Erica.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying thanks, Erica.
Okay, I was gonna say, I've heard that cattle can sort of pick and choose what they eat when they get into a fresh pasture. Can you talk a little bit about that and how they know what to eat?
How they know what to eat. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you put them at high enough density, you can get them to eat anything.
Okay.
And you kind of want to be operating in that space sometimes, but you don't always want to do that. It's not always what the land needs. Cattle pick for nutritional value, so they don't really pick for flavor. They'll touch it with their nose, they'll remember smells, they'll remember feelings of plants, and eat plants that have the most cases highest bricks, so the plants that are usually doing the healthiest and fit what they're looking for. So yeah, we also have a big tray of minerals out for the animals to eat. And what that does is it allows them to get any sort of nutritional value they're missing in micronutrients. So it's a huge sled. I hate moving it. It's so dumb, but it's good for it's good for the plants and also the animals. Because you'll notice that they'll eat different stuff when they're in different pastures. So maybe this pasture, they're eating a lot of copper, but the next one, they're eating way more boron. And you know that when they're eating it, they're pooping it back into the soil. And as long as you're getting a good ground cover and you're making sure that you're sequestering carbon and you're making sure that you're not stopping life, but continuing life to go, those micronutrients will be put to use. And the animal's dung will decompose effectively in P2.
Amazing. And do you have dung beetles that you're seeing on the land?
Yeah, we have a few. We have a big version, which are like huge, and then this little tiny version that we get as well. So as it gets warmer, they start getting crazy, and it's pretty wild to see. And you can kind of see the aftermath of when they've been there because there's no poop. So it's fun to see. So yeah, there are definitely dung beetles.
Amazing. Erica, did you want to come off mute and say something?
I'll say hi. Nice to see you all. And I see a next question in there that, Stefan, if you want to talk about the processing and meat sales and such.
You
I
want to
can-
do that? You know way more about that than I do. Erica's my cousin. We work together on our ranch. She
Hi,
does,
everyone. Thank
she
you.
does a lot of really cool stuff.
It's great to see everyone this morning. It's always great to chat with like-minded folks who are trying to figure out how to just do things the best way. So Evan's question is about the lack of abattoirs in California and if we built our own. So no, we haven't built our own. Yes, that's a problem, is particularly here in Santa Barbara County where there are no abattoirs at all. For some time, the one USDA inspected facility that's in the next county over called JNR Meats stopped processing for other folks. They were a lot of the butchers were going towards a model where they would buy cattle and process cattle and then sell meat direct, mainly because that's where the money is for them. And we've also heard that not everyone loves the bureaucracy of navigating what it takes to become a US inspected facility. So for a facility like us, for a ranch like ours, where we don't have an on-site slaughter facility, we have to look for folks that process and handle animals in the way that is in alignment with our philosophy. So that means looking at things like the stress level before the animals get harvested and such. So luckily now there are two facilities that are back to processing for people. That's how we process. It is just easier to sell direct to the consumer if the meat is USDA inspected, and it also adds a layer of safety to make sure that things are done in the right way. So do we sell through, I think the second part of the question is, do you sell the meat directly or through other avenues?
All direct.
Currently, we sell direct, and we sell also direct to some restaurants that are in this area. There are a lot of folks who are in the restaurant business who are interested in sourcing locally and sourcing the highest quality of the best raised meats. So we're very lucky in that way that they seek us out because of what we do. Evan, I hope that answered your question. If you have other questions, drop them in the chat.
Are you allowed to say which restaurants so that we can go and have
I
their?
think so. I think so. Stephanie, you want to go through the list?
Flatbread does stuff with us. They did a burger 2 weeks ago. Bell's is using our meat right now at an event at the Ojai Valley Inn. So Bell's, which is a Michelin-starred restaurant. We also have honey. We also do honey. I forgot to put that in. We do a lot of honey, and they use our honey. They have right now they have a dessert that's honey ice cream. That's insane. What else we got? Nana Thai uses our ground beef as well for a grao pao. It's a Thai dish that's super spicy, and I've had it a bunch of times. It's so good. So yeah, if you want to try our meat, a lot of the restaurants actually use it. And what else? Bell's also takes all of our eggs. So we kind of have a direct outlet for a lot of this stuff since there's so many restaurants around us. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So you have bees and cattle and chickens. Do you have any other animals on the ranch?
Wild horses that we leave with the cattle that have been gentled enough to be handled, but act as a different grazing animal, which is important. We're getting a couple burros, so donkeys to put with the cows too. And we're looking into getting sheep, but Erica doesn't know that yet.
I'm like, wait, sheeps and burros, when that happened? And we might have a slight, tendency towards having pets. So yes, we have a couple goats and a couple of pigs. Currently, they're still pets.
Wonderful. And then one dog?
We have a couple dogs. My folks have two Great Danes, and then I have my little mutt dog who is bad with cows, so she doesn't help me, but I've had her forever. And then I have a couple horses too.
And then as far as people go, how many people do you have helping you do this work on a day-to-day basis?
For every day, there is, so the people who work here daily, Erica does all of the logistical stuff for getting meat processed and helping set up with events. My mom is what I would call the director of the creative director. She kind of manages stuff like that. Dad's the accountant. I'm the operations manager. And then we have two people who work with us full time who are with helping me with the cows. So there's me, Marcelino, and Sebastian. And we are kind of the ones who are always working on the ranch every day.
Fantastic. Nish, do you want to come off mute and ask your question or make your comment?
Yeah, thanks. So, I was wondering, like, are there like any cons to regenerative farming? Or I guess I should put it, like, is there anything that's more difficult that what you do compared to more traditional ranching? I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, why don't others copy what you do? And copy your practice? Is it maybe something to do with space? I can imagine maybe your practice being a little bit more space intensive than more traditional ranching.
That's a great question. There's a couple things that hold people back. One is it costs a lot to switch, especially if you want to switch faster than slower. So like putting in all the infrastructure makes it really tough. Putting in all the fencing, especially putting in all the water lines, that sucks. That's one of the biggest inhibitors just for stopping people. A lot of people can switch because they are spending a lot of money on stuff that they don't have to be spending money on. Like you can kind of slowly wean yourself off pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides. You can't fully cut yourself off, but you can slowly wean off them as you switch. And it takes so long is the other big thing. It's not a year process. We've been doing this intensely probably since 2020, and we're now starting to see it's 2024, and we're now starting to see some of the benefits of it. And so it's a long process to see the benefits. And then it's a big shift in mindset. Instead of seeing a weed and trying to kill it and just leaving it instead is a pretty tall order. And sometimes I'm still kicking down weeds when I should just not spend my time doing that and focus on more of other things. So it takes a long time. It costs a lot. The only way you can pay for it is if you take from other stuff that you're doing and switch. It's a huge mind change, and it takes, like I said, it takes forever.
Do you end up having to sell the meat at a higher cost to offset the higher investment that you have to put?
Oh yeah, we get to. We mark that. We sell a hamburger for $15 a pound. We sell it really expensive. And I think you can use that to an advantage. I think that's a benefit. You have a better product, so you get to say it's better, and you can market. I do so many done it, but so you market it as someone. One, it's way healthier. It's better for you. It tastes better, and then also they are being part of the solution. You're helping somebody. You're helping change your environment. By doing that, you're making a positive impact on the environment. And I think a lot of people want to do that, and a lot of people want to know their ranchers. So it is a lot of work in marketing, and most of our sales are not done online. It's usually word of mouth or me talking to people directly. So it's another job, but if you do that work, you're able to sell it for much more. People, I think as it gets more popular, people will really want to not only be involved in the movement, but benefit from it. Yeah, it tastes better. It's better stuff, man.
Yeah, and I would just to add to that, I think that there's a cultural aspect as well, Nish. I think that for us not coming from generations of ranchers where We've been doing this way for many generations. This is just what we do. It's easier to kind of change your mindset because it makes sense. So we just go along with it. And I guess in tandem with that, yes, there's an educational part of the consumer as well. So once consumers understand that these animals have a great life and that what we do is better for the environment and that the product that you consume is better for your health, that helps. Then it's a no-brainer. Then people want to support.
Yeah, thanks for that.
In,
I guess
in,
I do have one other question. Is this practice conducive for meat production? Can you do this like exclusively for dairy cows?
You can do it for anything you want. So if you want to look into some, like, I'm sure you've heard of him, but Gabe Brown and is another person who does all of it all at once. He's doing farming. He takes his animals across his land. So he'll take his cows, sheep, pigs, whatever, to graze down something and then plant into that and then grow. So you can do it for pretty much any form of agriculture that you could incorporate animals into. And it's kind of, it seems to me that it really helps those, whatever other agriculture you're doing, do really well. Like the ducks that they're producing across the street and the sheep as well, or the lamb as well, is popular too, along with their wine. So it's just kind of diversifying to make sure you are just as resilient as the land you're creating or managing, not creating.
Got it. Thank you.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. I'm of course a fungi nerd. Do you ever find mushrooms out in the pastures?
We found so many chanterelles this year, it was insane. And so one of the guys, Marcelino, I work with, he's a chef too, which is awesome. He does butchering, can cook all this crazy stuff. So he goes out. We go out with another guy named Fernando too, and they'll just go find all of them. And because we're doing the leaving stuff for a long time, the cows will eat the chanterelles. So as long as we're leaving them for a long time, we're able to harvest as many as possible. We had like gallons of it. It was crazy. We had so much. And so then the next day they come and they make a lot of quesadillas with it. And they're so good. Habanero quesadillas with chanterelles. So we've been eating that for a long time. I just had one yesterday.
Amazing.
Yeah, lots of chanterelles. I don't know fungi that well, but I do know that one. So you got to come and look.
That sounds great. And then as far as the age of your trees on the property, is it pretty diverse or is it mostly just the old trees that were sort of there from the beginning, or do you have like any sort of plan to increase the number of trees on the property?
So in the riparian area, did we do that with NRCS with all the plantings of trees? Or is that just mom? So we planted a bunch, but also with the management we're doing, there's so many young ones. There's teenagers, there's little baby ones, there's everything. Because we're leaving it for almost a year or as long as we do leave it. A lot of that stuff is able to grow. So because the cows will graze the baby oaks or trees, eat the baby oaks. So as long as you give them the rest they need to grow, they will grow.
Amazing. And then,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I have a question about the community around the area, other farmers and ranchers. If there is, as Anne mentioned, we are in Santa Ynez Valley, just 30 minutes away from you. And when Anne was there and engaged with different people to sort out what was the movement of regenerative agriculture in general was not as expansive as we first thought. So what is your at large in big scale thinking or impression? Are we moving besides, I mean, you are, but are there others? Have you created a community that generates a critical mass of this shifting of whatever they're doing, being vineyards, being grazing animals, being food, vegetables, and whatever else? Is there something moving in the direction of regenerative agriculture in the area?
Yeah, I think Kiss the Ground, they had that one movie that was really popular in promoting it. They did a study throughout America and they found that only like 5% of the population even knows about what regenerative agriculture is. So people are still kind of learning and it's growing. In our community, yeah, it's starting to shift. Our neighbor, Farini, the one who federated, it was a massive growing operation, cover cropped for the first time we've ever seen this year. So it's slowly starting to, I think it is, it feels like it is seep in. People are getting more into it. I think because a lot of the practices you can do at scale, it'll shift towards that. But what I really hope for is that like if a bunch of small farms pop up, that would be the coolest. Because a lot of
And-
people live in this. Go ahead.
No, and do you have conversations, or is there, a meeting space or a virtual meeting space, or it's more, a marketplace where you guys can meet and or discuss, or how do you are you in touch? I know
Yeah.
once upon a time, it's just an example in Italy, my family ancestor, there was the market where all the owners of the farming was really a physical space. And so once a week they would meet and exchange notes even, right? It was such a small community, but today it's a different scale. So I was just curious how those informations and community are formed and nurtured.
Steph, can I speak to that?
Yep.
So one of the things that we are doing is we started a foundation called the Las Cumbres Ranch Education Foundation, and the intention is to host workshops and invite the community, people that are interested, the lay community, but also folks that are part of the ranching community and the agriculture community in Santa Barbara County to come learn with us and to come share ideas. The other things that we're looking at as we contemplate this work going forward is how to start educating the younger generation. So bringing school kids to tour and talk about regenerative and the benefits thereof. And Stefan's doing a tour next week for a animal science class from Alan Hancock. We're looking to partner with such organizations like there's an outdoor education group called Wilderness Youth in our area. So we're looking at ways to partner with organizations that already have boots on the ground and have access to the communities that we can bring to the ranch so that they can see firsthand and be out in nature and learn that way. And then specifically as far as peers go, Hilaria, I think that the first workshop that we hosted about a year ago with Alejandro Carrillo was an immense success. Firstly, because Alejandro is so easy to learn from, and the way he teaches is super accessible. So he didn't overwhelm folks. He said, use it as a lab, use your land as a lab, and try little things and try and see what works. So it makes it much less daunting for people to start looking at, oh, I can do this and I can do that. And I think that, as you say, if we kind of go in all directions, trying to shift the consumer, trying to shift the community, trying to shift the focus, I think that the restaurants are a huge part of this because they serve folks where they can kind of feature ranchers and growers like us who are doing the work, so that's a way of educating people. So, the community is growing. There's different ways that education is happening. Here in Santa Barbara, we're lucky to have the Community Environmental Council. They are super involved. There's lots of groups. We're all kind of trying to cross-pollinate and shift towards something different. We'll see. But
Thank
there's
you.
openness, I'd say. Overall, there's definitely openness even in the families who've been in it for a very, very long time. They come, they look, and they're like, wow, there's a lot of grass here, and what are you doing? And there's curiosity and there's mutual respect. And that's something that Stefan talked about today, and also that Alejandro talked about a lot when he was here. Everybody has wisdom, and if folks are approached with a level of respect to and with the intention of learning from each other. It's much more likely that we create commonalities, I suppose.
Fantastic. Evan, do you want to come off mute and talk a little bit about your comment? Maybe.
Is it Evan, or is it the last question was here? I'm not aware of Peter Beck, is it?
I've never heard of him, Peter Bick. Guess we're gonna be looking him up after this.
We shall Google, thank you.
Yeah.
Steph, you want to look at the next question?
Leslie,
Yeah,
do you want to just come off mute and talk a little bit about it?
Or I will, and then when Evan fixes his mic, he can jump in. I'm just saying that I'm involved with Fibershed, which is regen ag, kind of focused on the sheep, alpaca, cotton, flax, aspect. But
Awesome.
the SoCal chapter I'm involved with goes from San Luis Obispo down to Mexico, which is way too huge. And I spend half of my time around Orcut. So I'm in your neck of the woods, and some of the producers in my region are grazing their sheep on, ranches in San Ynez, et cetera. In any case, I'd love to support what you're doing, like rather than try to create my own programming up there. So if I could get the word out about the workshops that you're running and support that, I'd love to. If I could drop my email in the chat and we could connect.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And this is what it takes, people meeting each other on a Sunday, and we create a network that way, and we support other folks as well. So hopefully it can be a mutually supportive experience.
Well, and also to put a point on your remark about restaurants and whatnot, is that we really are also trying to build the Commonwealth, right? Like the local economy. It's our money and our time supporting our neighbors' projects and their money and their time, instead of, extracting it all from our communities and popping it into the, massive capitalist machine. I won't go there because we don't have time for that.
Yes, absolutely. And, I'll just speak for myself. I think it's super cool to roll up in a restaurant and see, oh, I know that person who, raised these chickens, or, raised those animals, and know the people that cook the food for you. It does bring it back to a time before going to the supermarket and not knowing where it came from, probably from New Zealand or somewhere. So yes, that is great. And it's important to have a sustainable food system.
Well, also, if I can comment on something that Fabio just wrote here about, informing the consumer. I have people in my neighborhood who won't eat the oranges off the neighbor's tree because their literal quote is, "I don't know where that's been." And they drive to the grocery store and they buy it there. And I'm just like, oh, wow, we have quite a hill to climb ahead of us. So,
yeah.
Thank you. I see that Evan managed to. Evan, do you?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm
You managed
sorry.
to make the mic working.
Yeah.
Well,
So I don't know, just a minute about me so you understand the context with which I come to this. So my name's Evan Kleiman. I host a show on KCRW called Good Food, and basically for 26 years I've been interviewing people from all aspects of the food system, spectrum, world. It's a show about life seen through food. And I became aware of Peter Bick watching some of his videos on TikTok that were circulating about a documentary he did in 2014 called Carbon Cowboys. He's a professor at an Arizona university and became aware of Savory's pasture management practices, and was really interested to see if he could put together a scientific protocol of investigation that would hold up as peer-reviewed science. And so for over 10 years, they've been doing these projects with a just mind-boggling array of different variables that are being tested on ranches in the southeast part of the United States, where of ranches that are next door to each other. So looking at ranches that use regenerative ag and savory style managed practices next to ranches that don't. And the whole process is just incredibly fascinating. He has a series that's coming out later this year called Roots So Deep. And we've been holding my interview with him for that to come out. But for me, what was the most powerful of the work he's doing, aside from just the sheer science, and if you find him on Google, it's BYCK, Peter Bick. You can pull up all of the studies and all of the scientists involved. But what was amazing to me was the ranchers. So he did this in a part of the United States where there's a great deal of political polarization. And so, you know, one starts watching this feeling, you know, with all of our California biases that might be in place about who is going to think what and how open they're going to be. And in fact, what is so amazing is how the ranchers who were doing ranching in the traditional way and really struggling with climate change, with cost of pesticides, cost of hay, seeing what their neighbors doing, and maybe having never actually had a conversation with them, even though living next door for 20 years. And Peter kind of forcing them to meet each other and interact, and to watch in real time the regenerative ag rancher talk to a traditional rancher was, I found, just so powerful and moving. And the thing that was, to me, like really moved me to tears was when a lot of the traditional ranchers realized that if they moved to this system, they would have birds back on their land. That seemed to be the thing that pushed them to maybe start experimenting with a small part of their land. Anyway, it's just a very interesting project, and especially interesting to see it happening in a part of the country where one has all of these assumptions about how things are being done.
Thank you, Evan, for sharing it with us.
We got a new movie.
And
We're gonna watch it.
Yeah, it seems connecting very much to what Las Cumbres is also doing. And there is so Frank, do you want to also introduce yourself? Do you have, so Frank Schillace is our next fellow, joining in Santa Ynez in a week. And yeah, I let you introduce yourself, Frank, if you like. So you will be a neighbor of Stefan and Erica.
Yeah, hi, nice to meet you. I will be your neighbor. Howdy, neighbor. I am a beekeeper and I study native and managed bees. And I got into beekeeping through sound, music, and sculpture. So I was kind of interested, Stefan, in your journey of being a musician and then also working with the land and working with nature and things like that.
And
Yeah.
you had a question. Yeah, sorry.
I was in LA. I was living in LA and I was doing producing music for a couple of artists, some pop, a lot of Japanese music, which is really funny. And I was having fun. Then I got hooked into Sunday service, and I was one of the engineers for that whole Kanye West thing for a while. And my mom, and this is all while learning about regenerative ag. My mom called me, and she said the cowboy who's here has to go back to his ranch in Arkansas. Would you be interested in coming back and being a part of this again? And I was like, I'm so tired of getting yelled at by famous people. I would love to come back. And since I've been here, I'm still writing and making music and still doing that aspect, but now I don't have to don't have to be scared all day. Cows are way less mean than famous people. It's crazy. Yeah, so I like it's a lot of the same skill set of being able to stay awake for long periods of time if you need to, having to go do stuff that you had no idea you'd have to do, and then figuring it out while you're doing it. Staying calm while everybody's freaking out, and just being mellow about it because it's whatever. It's all going to be fine. And a lot of those translate directly into ranching. Oh, a pipe broke at 8-9 p.m. Great. Let's go fix that right now. Like all this stuff. Oh, the cows got out. Yes, we're going for a ride. Let's go deal with this. And it's a lot more mellow in the sense that as long as you try to do what you need to and you get what you need to done, it's probably all going to be fine. So I think a lot of those skill sets transfer. And I read so many books. Oh my God, from Voisin to Sir Albert Howard. And then I just realized you only really needed to read like holistic management. You don't need to read the reasons that they wrote holistic management. You can just stick with a simple book and get all of the stuff you need to. Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened, I think. But yeah.
That's cool. That is funny. I worked in music videos for a while, and that is such a vibe of like, yeah, something went wrong. Let's be chill. I'm gonna Google things on my phone. We'll fix it. We'll figure it out. But it makes sense that would translate. Everything is gonna go wrong at some point.
Yeah.
No matter what you do.
I'm curious, Frank, so what were you saying about bees and music and how do those tie together? I'm curious.
Originally I was planning a sculpture with live bees that was based around a car that my grandfather owned that got so full of bees that it had to be towed off the lot. And through that plan, I went and learned beekeeping, and I was like, there's so much to know. There's so much to do. This is like a world that is actually a black hole and not a planet. It just like sucks you in. And so I've been beekeeping for like 6 years now. It just kind of like consumed me. But like over that time, I figured out there's a lot to listen to within the hive, and you can totally just, stick a microphone in there and play with those sounds. And when I come down, I'm going to be working with the smoker and trying to turn that into a sound object, kind of recontextualizing it because I don't like to use too much smoke and too much fire in my practice in California. Whereas in New York, I was an urban beekeeper, so there's not really risk of wildfires. You can smoke the bees up all day.